Bag alert, bag alert, bag alert, bag alert, folks. That's right. Joe Thuney gets an extension. We have to talk about the Tush Push because why? It survives once again. We also have to discuss the passing of former Colts owner Jim Irsay, as well as the Lions withdrawing their playoff proposal, the NFL heading to the Olympics, Caleb Williams tried avoiding being drafted by the Bears, which in some ways we sort of talked about that a few episodes ago, but it's okay, as well as a potential developing situation that could be happening in Washington, which is Terry McLaurin holding out possibly. I don't know for sure, but just possibly, as well as the NFL rolling out a new award. Yes, O-Linemen finally get love because you know why? O-Linemen are people too. So they deserve an award just like how everybody else deserves an award, as well as grades for the NFC East. Okay, all of this and more on the 79th episode of the Football Junkies podcast. All right, I am your host with the most. I'm your GM who currently is not on the team right now, but don't you worry about it, okay? Don't you worry about it because why? I am your chief Bagrodamus. I'm your chief head of the table. Anything and everything related to theories, possible trades, possible extensions, possible cuts, all of that and more. I cover that over here at the Football Junkies podcast because why? We are the best podcast you can listen to on a week to week, day to day basis. But guess what? I am all these things and more. But most importantly, the most important thing that you must remember is I am your host, Kale. You already know how these things are about to go. You already know how my intros are about to go. So guess what? On three, one, two, three, let's lock in. All right, folks, let's just get into the meat and potatoes of everything that is going on in the league right now. So let's just get this one out the way. Joe Thuney inks a 2-year, $35 million extension, $33.5 million guaranteed, and he'll be making $17.5 million a year. Folks, we all knew this was going to happen. We all knew that once he got traded to the Bears, he was going to get some form of an extension. Me personally, I didn't believe it was going to be a long-term extension. I thought it was going to be more of like what they gave him, which was, a 2-year, $35 million deal. Simply because, for one, you don't want to give him this large deal and then he just retires in the middle of it. No. Instead, you want to give him all of his money up front. So if he decides to walk away from football, I don't know, next year or whatever, guess what? It's not really going to affect you. Not to mention, Joe Thuney is still one of the best interior offensive linemen in the league right now. You're talking about somebody that has a lot of experience from winning Super Bowls with the Patriots and then the Chiefs to now going to the Bears and potentially, setting the culture within the offensive line room. I think this was a great move for the Bears. You lock up somebody that is going to be able to be an anchor on the offensive line as well as in that locker room. So, all in all, congratulations to Joe Thuney. Now let's talk about this whole Tush Push situation. So, here's my thing with it. Like it, love it, whatever you want. The Tush Push stands. Once again, it was close. It was very close. It was 2 votes away from being banned. But luckily, those two votes did not happen. So let's get into it. So the Eagles owner, Jeffrey Lurie, along with Jason Kelsey, made a last-minute pitch to all the people that were in that room on why they don't need to ban the Tush Push. And it worked. But here's the thing, though. Jeffrey Lurie criticized both Roger Goodell and Troy Vincent on advocating for the ban of the Tush Push, which I can understand their side, which is it's only a matter of time before somebody takes the extreme route and try to perform this play or try to defend the play, and in doing so, they have a serious injury, which nobody really wants at this point, if we can be real here. And it looks like a dangerous move anyway. Jason Kelsey stated, and I quote, he would have returned to the NFL if he could run 60 tush pushes a game, end quote. The teams that voted to keep the tush push includes the Browns, the Dolphins, the Jaguars, the Lions, the Jets, Patriots, Ravens, Saints, and Titans. We all know that the Packers made this proposal, and most likely they will be the victim of multiple tush pushes once they face them. Man, that's going to be a fun game. But there is something that is very interesting, and this is coming from ESPN's Seth Wickersham. There is no data to support the notion that players were hurt from the tush push, which I would have thought at least maybe 2 or 3 people would have shown up. But for there to be no data that supports that, I mean, it's actually pretty good. But all in all, this was expected. This was not something that was, going to catch everybody off guard. No, this was expected. Everybody knows that when the Eagles are in that formation, they are going to convert. From getting that first down to that touchdown, they're always going to get it with the tush push. Now, there are other teams that have tried to at least replicate it as best as they could. Some of them have been a little bit successful, others not so much. But the fact of the matter is, folks, the tush push is one of the most popular plays in the league, and it's one of the most broken plays in the league. And it's going to continue to be broken until people decide to say, listen, we need to get rid of this. And most likely it'll probably happen next year. I wouldn't be surprised within the next 3 years they ban the tush push. And then the Eagles find a different variation of the tush push and then redo it all over again. I wouldn't be surprised at this point. But we do have some tragedy that we do have to report, and that is the passing of former Colts owner and CEO Jim Irsay. So here's the statement the Colts put out shortly after the announcement was made of the passing of Jim Irsay. And I quote, "We are devastated to announce our beloved owner and CEO Jim Irsay passed away peacefully in his sleep this afternoon. Jim's dedication and passion for the Indianapolis Colts, in addition to his generosity, commitment to the community, and most importantly, his love for his family, was unsurpassed," end quote. Jim Irsay became the principal owner at 37 following the passing of his father. He was a member of the Finance and Legislative Committee of the NFL and was a part of a group that was created by the former NFL Commissioner Pete Rozelle in the 80s to create the salary cap. Under ownership of Jim Irsay, the Colts made it to 2 Super Bowls and, of course, won 1 Super Bowl. He also created the Kicking the Stigma campaign, which is aimed at mental health and addictions. The Irsays have awarded $31 million in grants to organizations in the mental health and addiction fields, and ownership for the team has already been transferred to his daughters, who have held ownership titles since 2012. Jim Irsay has left a lasting legacy upon the NFL. From being a part of a group that created the salary cap, to being a member of the Finance and Legislative Committee, to creating the Kicking the Stigma campaign, Jim Irsay has done a lot for the NFL. And that's why you see such an outpouring of love from all the other teams, from former players that played with the Colts and whatnot. Because Jim Irsay was that guy. Jim Irsay was a type of owner where you could have a conversation with him. He wasn't that type of owner where he was uppity and he was in his box and, he would request for somebody to get you to then have a conversation with him. No. If you look at any of those highlights when it comes to the hard knocks, he was always in the locker room. He was always interacting with his players. Because he loved his players. He treated his players like family. And for him to just suddenly pass away definitely has left things a little bit of a somber moment within the NFL. Because Jim Irsay left a lasting legacy upon the NFL. And we all know that the Colts will be in great hands because his daughters have held ownership titles since 2012. So they are very familiar with the experience when it comes to running the Colts. And so, Jim Irsay, on behalf of me and the Football Junkies podcast, thank you for the legacy that you have left. Thank you and your family for all that you have done for football. Now let's talk about the Lions withdrawing their playoff proposal. So let me break down to you exactly what would have happened had this passed. So the change was going to affect the seeding of teams. So instead of the seeding being based on divisional games, it was going to be based on overall record. I have an example to prove this. So under the current format, this is what would have happened. So with the first seed would have been the Lions, the Eagles, the Buccaneers, the Rams, the Vikings, Commanders, and Packers. Fine. But here is the version if the Lions proposal would have passed. It would have been the Lions, the Eagles, the Vikings, the Commanders, Packers, Buccaneers, and Rams. Folks, this would have been a disaster. Not to mention, it would have watered down divisional games. Divisional games are so important, especially in the later part of the season, that if you was to make this move, it would diminish it, and then not to mention, it would just essentially say, hey, division games don't matter. As long as you have the best record, you'll always have a better seeding. No, that's not how things work. That's not how they never worked. So I don't understand why the Lions would try to do this, but I'm so glad that they withdrew it because they knew that it probably wasn't going to pass. But we do have some other things that we do have to talk about, and that is the NFL going to the Olympics. That's right, folks. Flag football is going to the Olympics. So here is how things are going to go. One player from every team is allowed to participate, and every designated international player is allowed to represent their country. 10 players will be chosen by every country's National Olympic Committee, and the NFL and the Players Association are also working together to allow both current and former players to compete in the Olympics. Now, here's the statement from both Roger Goodell and Troy Vincent. So Roger Goodell says this, and I quote, "I think this news represents a great opportunity for the sport. It's truly the next step in making NFL football and football a global sport for men and women of all ages and all opportunities across the globe. We think that's the right thing to do, and this is a big step in accomplishing that," end quote. Now, this is what Troy Vincent says, and I quote, "We are now on a global stage, which is exciting. We can truly bring America's greatest game on the global stage," end quote. Folks, this is great for football as a whole. And the reason why I say that is because, for one, the NFL has been trying in the last few years to really make the sport go global. And I think this is the best way to really do it because now everybody will be able to see it. And now all the countries, both current countries that the NFL does business with and future countries that the NFL will do business with, will be interested in hosting at least a game or two there. We already know that they're hosting games in Europe and Spain and whatnot and Mexico, but I wouldn't be surprised if we have an NFL game in Japan. I wouldn't be surprised if we have a game in, I don't know, Australia or Africa or China or any of these places. I would not be surprised. The NFL is trying to make this a global sport, and it's very much needed because we're starting to see an influx of international players also make their presence known in the league as well. So it's only right that you include them with this. Not to mention, if you have former players to connect with the current generation and past generation, I think it would be even better. If you have someone like, I don't know, Michael Vick or Randy Moss or who else? Eric Dickerson. Well, no, Eric Dickerson's too old. I don't know why Eric Dickerson came to mind. Who else? Gronk or Tom Brady or whomever. If you get any of those guys, I guarantee you it would be amazing. Now, granted, this isn't normal football. This is flag football. So all the tackling stuff, that's out the window, but I still think it'll be great for the game as a whole. My only concern is this. How would this affect minicamp, OTAs, training camp, and all of those things in the summer? Because we all know that the Olympics happen when? In the summer. So how exactly is that going to work from a scheduling standpoint? Will the players that will be participating in the Olympics, will they be excused from this? I think once we find clarity with that point, everything else will fall into place. Now let's talk about something a little bit more controversial, and that is Caleb Williams not wanting to go to the Bears. So this is coming from a new book that's supposed to be coming out called American Kings, Biography of the Quarterback by Seth Wickerson, who works for ESPN. And so this goes in a few different directions. So let's just get into it. For starters, Caleb Williams and his team consulted with lawyers on how they can avoid getting drafted by the Bears in the collective bargaining agreement. Caleb Williams' father said this, and I quote, "Chicago is the place quarterbacks go to die, and I don't want my son playing for the Bears," end quote. Caleb Williams' father also spoke to Archie Manning, father of Eli and Peyton Manning, lawyers and agents while considering if his son could sign with the UFL and become an unrestricted free agent in 2025. That way he can dictate where he wants to go instead of the draft. His father also argues about the rookie wage scale and even says, and I quote, "the rookie cap is just unconstitutional," as well as saying the CBA is the worst piece of shit I've ever read, end quote. During the combine, Caleb Williams met with Kevin O'Connell, and Williams actually dreamt of going to Minnesota. But Ryan Poles, GM of the Bears, said this, and I quote, "We're drafting you no matter what," end quote. On one hand, I understand where Caleb Williams and his team is coming from. They don't want to go to Chicago because Chicago is a very dysfunctional situation. Let's be real here. Let's really call it for what it is. Chicago is not a good place to go to. If you are not a defensive player, if you're not trying to go after the quarterback, if you're not trying to get an interception, if you're not trying to go and get a sack, if you're not trying to do any of those different things, do not go to Chicago. That's just what it is. Because Chicago has not had their act together in a long time. And I understand where Caleb Williams and his team is coming from. However, I would have never said this publicly. I would have kept this privately. And the reason why I say that is because if Caleb Williams goes through a phase in this season where he is not playing his best ball, they are going to pull up this whole quote again. Do you really want that? We have seen multiple times how the media can change a narrative. So why would you let something like this come out? Because now this can be used against you. If Caleb Williams goes through, 3 to 5 games where he's not playing his best ball, they're going to pull up all of these quotes again. And they're going to use that against Caleb Williams. They're going to ask it in press conferences. They're going to ask it leading up to games. They're going to ask it every single chance that they get. They are going to hammer this in the ground. Because why? You allowed something like this to come out. If you guys did not want to go to the Bears, then you guys should have done everything in your power to make sure that you guys didn't do it. But at the same time, one could probably argue that even if they did go the extra mile to say, hey, we don't want to go to the Bears, I don't think it still would have changed anything. Because the Bears had their feet in the sand. They wanted to get Caleb Williams. Come hell or high water, they were going to get Caleb Williams. Nothing was going to change. Now, I will say this. The Bears have shown that they're trying to change their thinking by getting Ben Johnson and then adding a whole bunch of weapons and help for the offensive line. I think that was great. Now, the question is this. How is it going to look when it all comes together? Because right now, a lot of pressure is on the Bears this upcoming season, specifically to Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams. If this relationship does not work, the Bears are going to have to scrap this thing and start all over again. And let's be real here. The Bears have no problem doing that. The Bears in recent years have not had the best success when it comes to quarterback. They messed up Justin Fields, and I don't care what anyone says. You can fight me. I have no problem with that. But the Bears messed up on Justin Fields. They did not give Justin Fields the right weaponry and the right supporting cast to really help him. Mitchell Trubisky, horrible. That was a horrible pick. So Caleb Williams does not have anybody that he can go to and say, hey, what did you do in your first 2 years to really stand out? Hey, how do I maneuver through the sophomore slump in my first year as a rookie? How do I maneuver all of these different things? He doesn't have that compared to other teams that have that type of connections where they can reach out to their former players and have those conversations. That's the problem in all of this. That's what happens when you are the first overall pick. Same thing with Cam Ward. Everyone thinks that Cam Ward is in a great situation. Cam Ward is in a shithole. Because you know why? For one, I can make a strong case that his head coach right now will probably be under the hot seat come the end of this upcoming season. I can make a strong case right. There's going to be some significant changes on that team come this time next year. That's what happens when you are the first overall pick. You are inheriting shit, and you are going to try to turn it into gold. It's impossible. So I say all that to say this. For any person that believes that, oh, me being the first overall pick, that's great. Okay, that's fine. It may feel good when that wire transfer comes through and you get that money and that money is added to your bank account. But guess what? When your team isn't winning a whole bunch of games in your first 3 years into the league, when all you've won is maybe 5 games in 3 years, oh, okay. Okay. Well, we'll see if the money was worth it. We'll see if the signing bonus was worth it. We'll see if all the commercials and whatnot in your local area is worth it. We'll see. Because I can point to a couple of former first overall picks that are not having a good time right now. Trevor Lawrence is one of them. Everyone thought Trevor Lawrence was going to be the savior of football. Oh my God. Trevor Lawrence is going to do something amazing when he gets to the NFL. Oh my God. Trevor Lawrence, Trevor Lawrence, Trevor Lawrence. What's Trevor Lawrence done? What's Trevor Lawrence done? Nothing. Nothing. Even though he got paid like he did something. He didn't do anything. So, am I surprised? No. Do I think there's going to be more things that come out when this book drops? For sure. But this is probably the tip of the iceberg at this point. Now let's get into this whole Terry McLaurin situation very briefly. Really don't have a lot to talk about, but basically Terry McLaurin missed a day, and so people are speculating that maybe he's in a holdout because he's looking for a new deal. If that's the case, well then the Commanders just need to pay him. Simple as that. Because Terry McLaurin has been consistent. He has showed up. He has been a team player up until this point. So it's only right that you compensate him. And it's only right that you give him a really good deal. He took a discount with y'all the last time y'all went to the table. He's looking for a re-up. He's looking for a good deal, a really good deal. And mind you, he's having the success that he is having without a stable quarterback. Last season was the first year that he has actually had a stable quarterback. All the other times he hasn't. Think about that for a second. You got to make sure that you take care of Terry McLaurin. Just saying. Now, briefly, before we get into everything else, Terry McLaurin's market value is 3 years, $93.1 million, which is $31.1 million a year. Do I think he could possibly get a little bit more than that? Yes. Do I think the Commanders will probably give him more than that? Yes. Jaden Daniels is on a rookie contract. You don't have to do a whole lot with Deebo Samuel. You don't have to do a whole lot with Laramie Tunsil. You don't have a lot of big contracts that you have to pay out to people. So you might as well want to take care of Terry McLaurin. He's the veteran on the offense. Compensate him for it. Please. Because what I don't want to see on my timeline on Twitter is a bunch of Terry McLaurin mocks in a Steelers jersey. Or Terry McLaurin Berg account. Or whatever. I'm tired of seeing it. All right? Please, sign the man. I don't want to hear any speculations about, well, I've talked to sources and sources have told me that Terry McLaurin wants to become a Pittsburgh Steeler. Don't want to hear it. Don't want to hear it. Commanders, write the check. Write the check now. Let's get into this whole O-Line award thing. Because we need to talk about this because you know why? Offensive linemen are people too. Okay? That should probably be a t-shirt. Offensive line are people too. They deserve an award. Everybody else gets an award. Corners get an award. Safeties get an award. Linebackers get an award. Everybody else gets an award. But do offensive linemen get an award? Nope. Well, guess what? They finally do. Because guess what? The NFL has created the Protector of the Year award, which basically is an idea that was pushed by both Deion Dawkins and Andrew Whitworth. Now, the panel will include LaCharles Bentley, Jason Kelsey, Sean O'Hara, Orlando Pace, Will Shields, and Andrew Whitworth, which is great because I don't want any journalists to be in charge of this. Because we all saw what happened when it came to the Defensive Player of the Year. Yeah, that's right. I got beef with a lot of the journalists who said, Myles Garrett should deserve the Defensive Player of the Year award. And then they based their stuff off of PFF grades. No. It should have been TJ Watt. TJ Watt should be a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year recipient right now. But no, everybody wants to use PFF grades for it. Yeah, I got a little bit of a beef about it. Yeah, it turned a little bit into a rant, but who cares? But all in all, when we look at this, all right, offensive linemen deserve awards, and this was long overdue. So I'm super excited to see who is going to win the award this year. Now let's get into the grades, folks. That's right, NFC East. You already know Giants, Commanders, Eagles, and Cowboys. Yes, let's talk about it. So let's get into the Giants' first positions of need: quarterback, safety, cornerback, interior offensive line, and tackle. We all know that they got Abdul Carter, Jackson Dart, Darius Alexander, Cam Scatterbo, Marcus Mimbo, Thomas Fadone, and Corey Black. Now, when we look at their team stats, however, they were the 24th ranked defense, and they allowed 24.4 points per game, 346.8 yards per game, 5.6 yards per play, 41 touchdowns, and had a 34.3 quarterback pressure percentage. They were 8th in passing defense and allowed 210.6 passing yards per game, 6.5 yards per play, and 23 passing touchdowns. They were 27th in run defense and allowed 18 rushing touchdowns, 136.2 rushing yards per game, 4.6 rushing yards per play, and allowed 66 rushes of 10 plus yards or more. They were 30th when it came to offense, which is diabolical. And they averaged 16.1 points per game, 294.8 yards per game, 4.7 yards per play, and 28 touchdowns. They were 28th in passing offense and averaged 189 passing yards per game, 5.1 passing yards per play, and 15 passing touchdowns. They were 23rd in rushing offense and averaged 104.9 rushing yards per game, 4.2 rushing yards per play, 13 rushing touchdowns, and had 46 rushes of 10 plus yards or more. Here's my problem with their draft. I know a lot of people are saying that they had an A-plus draft. No, they didn't. By no means did they have an A-plus draft. In actuality, I would say it's probably a B- to maybe a B+. And let me explain why. Abdul Carter was not a need. It was a want. Jackson Dart, on the other hand, was a need because they needed a future quarterback. And I understand there's a whole bunch of people that are saying, well, Abdul Carter was the best pass rusher in college. Abdul Carter this, Abdul Carter that. Let me tell you something, all right? I'm not trying to sound like a hater, but I don't see it with Abdul Carter. I see Mike Green on a higher pedestal than Abdul Carter because with Mike Green has a versatile skill set. He's not just going to beat you with power. He can beat you with speed. He can use his hands. He can do all of that and more. Whereas Abdul Carter, it's the direct opposite. And so me personally, I don't see why the Giants did it, but hey, I mean, this is the same team that let Saquon Barkley walk, and then he goes to the Eagles and then wins them a Super Bowl. I'm not surprised. But on to everything else. Cam Scatterbo, I feel like that was a pretty good pick as well because they definitely wanted to do more with the run game. This is my analogy of Cam Scatterbo. Cam Scatterbo is the Mick Foley of football. Now you're probably wondering, why would you say something like that? Let me explain why. Cam Scatterbo looks for contact. He doesn't avoid it. He purposely looks for someone to run over, looks for someone to truck, looks for someone to just bring down his shoulder and just give it to him. That's who Cam Scatterbo is. Darius Alexander, I was a little bit upset about because I was very high on Darius Alexander, but I mean, of course they got him. But out of all the positions that they really needed, safety, I feel like they definitely really didn't need. And the only reason why I say that is because they got Javon Holland. I mean, if you wanted to, you probably could have used that second round pick and maybe a safety if you wanted to. But, I mean, again, is that really like a priority? Debatable. But All in all, I would give them a B minus or a B plus, honestly. And let's go over to the Cowboys. Cowboys actually have a lot. So here we go. Positions of need: running back, linebacker, cornerback, interior offensive line, wide receiver. So first round they get Tyler Booker. Second round they get Donovan Izaraku. Third round they get Siobhan Revel, then Jadon Blue, Shamar James, Ajani Cornelius, Jay Toa, Phil Maffa, and then Tommy Aking Besto. I think I pronounced your last name correctly. Hopefully I did. If I didn't, I deeply apologize. Now, when we break down their team stats, they had the 28th ranked defense, which allowed 27.5 points per game, 355.2 yards per game, 5.8 yards per play, and allowed 53 touchdowns. When we break this down, however, they were 17th in passing defense and allows 218.1 passing yards per game, 6.6 yards per play, and 28 passing touchdowns. When we break it down even more, they were 29th in run defense. They allowed 25 rushing touchdowns, 137.1 rushing yards per game, 4.8 rushing yards per play, and allowed 63 rushes of 10 plus yards or more. They were the 17th ranked offense, which averaged 20.6 points per game, 327.5 yards per game, 5 yards per play, and 29 touchdowns. They were 11th in passing offense, which averaged 227.2 passing yards per game, 5.7 passing yards per play, and 23 passing touchdowns. They were 27th in rushing offense, and they averaged 100.3 rushing yards per game, 4 rushing yards per play, 6 rushing touchdowns, and had 42 rushes of 10 plus yards or more. All in all, I feel like I want to give them an A. And this is why. For one, you got Donovan Izaraku, who could have easily been a first rounder. Siobhan Revel, who I feel like probably could have been a second rounder. You get Jadon Blue. You get Shamar James. You had a really good draft. Let's be real here, folks. For one, we all know that they're still rebuilding the offensive line. I'm not going to take that away from them. Tyler Booker, that was a good pick. Donovan Izaraku, that's a really good pick as well, because they need another pass rusher. Siobhan Revel, I feel like that's a sleeper of a pick as well. Now, we all knew that Siobhan Revel was probably going to drop a little bit simply because of the injury. But outside of that, he should have been a first rounder because he had all the intangibles to be a first round corner. Jadon Blue, I'm a little bit skeptical about, only because he has a fumbling issue. Super fast, ran a 4.2, but he has a fumbling issue. Outside of that, I can talk myself in or out of the rest of the picks. Now, wide receiver, sure, they probably could have addressed it, but they didn't. And in doing so, guess what they did? They made a trade and they got George Pickens. So all in all, I think they did really well when it comes to the draft. I would probably give them between a B plus and maybe an A, because those first those first 4 picks, great picks. But this is the type of draft that the Cowboys need to continue to have if they really want to be serious contenders. Otherwise, guess what's going to happen? They're going to be pretenders like they have been for the past, 20-some years. But moving on, though, to the Commanders. Their positions of need: edge, defensive tackle, wide receiver, safety, and corner. Here's the thing with the Commanders. They didn't have a whole lot of draft picks, so this would be pretty quickly, though. So their first round, they got Josh Connolly. Second round, they got Trey Amos. Fourth round, they got Jalen Lane. Sixth round, they got Kane Madrano. And then seventh round, they got Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt. Here's the thing with their draft. I understand why they went tackle in the first round, because they wanted to shore up the offensive line to make sure that they protect Jaden Daniels. Not opposed to that whatsoever. Now, granted, I feel like that was probably more of, best player available instead of, addressing a position of need. And I only say that because you were lower in the draft. So it wasn't going to be a whole bunch of great options when it came for you to pick. Unless if you trade up, which even then if you traded up, you would have less draft capital to go with. So Josh Connolly, I feel like that was a good move. Trey Amos, this is just my personal opinion. Trey Amos shouldn't have been a second round pick. Trey Amos should have been a first round pick. Trey Amos had all the intangibles to be a lockdown corner. Jalen Lane, I feel like that's an interesting pick. Just give it some time. Just give it some time. Same thing with their 6th round pick and their 7th round pick. Give it some time. I think they're probably in the best situation possible. Now, when we break down their stats, they were the 13th ranked defense, which allowed 23 points per game, 326.9 yards per game, 5.4 yards per play, and allowed 43 touchdowns. They were 3rd in passing defense, which allowed 189.5 passing yards per game, 6 yards per play, and 25 passing touchdowns. They were 30th in run defense, which allowed 18 rushing touchdowns, 137.5 rushing yards per game, 4.8 rushing yards per play, and 64 rushes of 10 plus yards or more. They had the 7th ranked offense, which averaged 28.5 points per game, 369.6 yards per game, 5.7 yards per play, and 54 touchdowns. Now, when we break this down, however, they were 17th in passing offense, which averaged 215.6 passing yards per game, 6.4 passing yards per play, and 29 passing touchdowns. When we shift things over to the rushing side, they were 3rd in the league, and they averaged 154.1 rushing yards per game, 5 rushing yards per play, and had 25 rushing touchdowns, as well as 67 rushes of 10 plus yards or more. So on one hand, yes, they were a pretty good team, but we all know that the run defense was not good. So I feel like they probably should have addressed that within the 1st to maybe 4th round. Just because, for one, there was a lot of defensive linemen that were available. And 2, teams were attacking the run defense a lot. So you wanted to make sure that you shore that up. Now, do I feel like they did it in this draft? Not really. Do I feel like they probably could have done it in free agency? Sure, there's a possibility, but I feel like that they should have addressed that in the 1st round. Tackle, I feel like you could have addressed it in the 2nd round if you wanted to. In the 4th round, there were still viable options at tackle. Better yet, if you wanted to, you could have taken the veteran approach and you could have gotten another veteran tackle if that's the route that you wanted to go. But overall, I feel like the Commanders probably had like a B plus, B minus type of draft. Now, granted, yes, they did have limited draft picks, but the people that they did draft were actually pretty good players. Now, on to one of my favorite teams, the Eagles. 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 Yes, I did that. Who cares? Their positions of need: edge, cornerback, interior offensive line, D tackle, wide receiver. Here's the thing. They have a lot of draft capital, so let's just go through it all. They had Jihad Campbell in the 1st round, Andrew Makuba, Ty Robinson, Mac McWilliams, Samel Mondin, Drew Kendall, Kyle McCord, Miles Hinton, Cameron Williams, and Antoine Powell-Ryland. Yeah, I don't know if y'all realize this, but Ty Robinson was a sleeper of a pick. Go ahead and look at his footage. Ty Robinson is a game wrecker. Ty Robinson is going to change the game. When you need someone to make a play, Ty Robinson, along with Jalen Carter, are going to make the play. That's who they are. I don't know how Ty Robinson was able to slip through the 4th round, but man, he is a monster. But when we look at their team stats, they had the number 1 ranked defense, which allowed 17.8 points per game, 278.4 yards per game, 4.7 yards per play, and allowed 31 touchdowns, as well as having a 31% quarterback pressure percentage. They were also 1st in passing defense, which allowed 174.2 passing yards per game, 5.1 passing yards per play, and 22 passing touchdowns. They were 10th in run defense, which allowed 9 rushing touchdowns, 104.2 rushing yards per game. They allowed 4.3 rushing yards per play, and 45 rushes of 10 plus yards or more. When we shift things over to the offense, however, they were the 8th ranked offense, which averaged 27.2 points per game, 367.2 yards per game, 5.6 yards per play, and 53 touchdowns. They were 29th in passing offense, which averaged 187.9 passing yards per game, 6.5 passing yards per play, and 24 passing touchdowns. They were 2nd in rushing offense, which averaged 179.3 rushing yards per game, 4.9 rushing yards per play, and had 29 rushing touchdowns, as well as 76 rushes of 10 plus yards or more. Folks, this is an A+. I don't care what anyone says. This is an A+ draft right here. For one, you have Jihad Campbell, who, from what I've heard, there's a good chance that they may use him in somewhat of that Derek Brooks type of role where he can be used in both outside linebacker as well as inside linebacker. So you have that, plus Andrew Makuba, plus Ty Robinson, and everybody else. Mac McWilliams, Samel Munden, Drew Kendall, Kyle McCord, Miles Hinton, Cameron Williams, Antoine Powell-Ryland. You got it all. And once again, what are the Eagles doing? Replenishing the defensive line as well as the offensive line. They double dipped at tackle this draft class, and they also got a defensive lineman. Folks, as long as offensive and defensive linemen are coming out of college, the Eagles will continue to draft them because why? They know how to develop them. That's just the Eagles' MO, and it'll continue to be the Eagles' MO. Me personally, with the amount of draft capital that they had, you would have thought that they would have messed up on some of these draft picks, but no. They did an excellent job with the people that they drafted. Miles Hinton is a sleeper of a pick. His father used to play in the league. If I'm not mistaken, I think he actually played for the Eagles as well. So you have that with Andrew Makuba, who was definitely one of the better safeties. I mean, come on. What is there that you can hate on when it comes to their draft class? Their first 3 players are going to be great players. We all know that they wanted to address linebacker. And so getting Jihad Campbell, I think, is great. Absolutely amazing. Because if you have not seen Jihad Campbell, go ahead, go on YouTube and look at Jihad Campbell. That dude is a monster. That dude is everywhere near the football. If the football is in somebody's hand, Jihad Campbell is right near them. And if not, well then guess what? Something is going on. But I'm going to let you guys debate if that was right or if I was wrong on giving the Eagles an A+. But I'm going to end this episode here. If you guys like what you are listening, please make sure you guys leave a 5-star review on anywhere and everywhere that you can listen to podcasts. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else that have podcasts. Now, if you want to access those places, make sure you go on our RSS feed. We have a link to all of those other places that are available as well. You can also go on our YouTube at Football Junkies Pod. All right, Football Junkies Pod. When you go there, you click on the link tree, and the link tree will also take you to anywhere and everywhere else that we have Football Junkies content, whether it be the Instagram, the TikTok, Blue Sky, Twitter, you name it, we're all there. Now, for my Instagram people, Football_Junkies Pod. All right, Football_Junkies Pod. Junkies Pod is not what? It is together, not spaced. All right, it is together, not spaced. Football_Junkies Pod. Now, for my TikTok people, Football Junkies Pod. Football Junkies Pod. Make sure when you go on the TikTok, there is a link to the YouTube that, it'll take you there. Most of the times when I put out the audio episode for the streaming platforms, it'll also be available on the YouTube around the same time as well. I'm also putting in transcripts as well, so you can read along with what exactly I'm saying. That way, if there's a particular spot that you're looking for, you can just go straight to that point. As always, I hope I gave you guys the fix that you need and love. Wait, I knew I'm forgetting something. Follow me on Twitter /X, GMKale, all right, GMKale, Kaile, as well as Blue Sky, GMKale, Kaile. I'm probably going to start posting more on Blue Sky soon. I probably am. I need to. But as always, I love you guys. I appreciate you guys so much. Happy Memorial Day. You guys be safe. Don't drink and drive. What am I going to do? I'm probably going to cook on the grill and look at more stuff about football. So, as always, this is your GM Kale signing out. Peace and love later. Unless somebody wants to, make a decision and sign somewhere or whatever. But later, guys.